So yeah, we'll start talking again, and we will say, what's the usual thing we say? What's up, internet? Since media here. What's up, internet? Since media here. So this is my Volca Modular, which I picked up on eBay secondhand a couple of years ago, I guess now, which for about 90 quid, and I think it's pretty good value. I mean, it's a semi-modular kind of West Coast Buchla inspired synthesizer. Um, it can do the things that West Coast synthesizers traditionally have. I mean, you've undoubtedly seen a lot of videos of this on YouTube already, so I'm not going to explain too much about it, but it is a good little standalone hardware synthesizer, and I've been playing around with it and having some fun. It's also a good complement for the AE modular because you can get a module for the AE which converts the voltages suitable for the Volca modular and the AE modular. The AE is between 0 and 5 volts. The Volca is between -3 and +3. So you can't plug all the connections together directly or you may damage something. But with that, all these components, the oscillator, the function generator, which are kind of like act either like an envelope or a two-stage envelope or an LFO, and these two low-pass gates plus the woggle, which is a kind of noise generator, and then this little maths thing that can take two inputs, add them, and multiply them together, and a little reverb here. You can use all those with the AE modular, so it's quite a handy way of getting a bunch of extra functionality that can connect to that if you have the VM bridge, the specific bridge that connects and converts the voltages. I don't have that to show you at the moment, but one of the things I've been thinking with this piece of equipment is that it would be quite nice perhaps to do a performance with it or to do something more or less just with a piece of hardware like this, but it isn't quite enough, I've been feeling, to do that by itself. So a year or so ago, Tangible Waves came out with the V-Case, which was their Volca-sized case, which is obviously an invitation to make a small AE modular that kind of goes together well with Volca equipment, the cool Volca range. And I kind of looked at that for a bit, and then I thought, yeah, it would be very good to make an AE case that complemented this little box. So I had a bit of a think about it, and I finally ordered, and it took a bit of time to arrive, but the box has now arrived, and we're going to be taking that out, and I will show you what I've got and what I'm thinking to go with the Volca. So let's just do that. Let's just take this out of its box and see what we've got. More of these handy protection things. Okay, so this is clearly the case. Yeah, the V-Case 7, which looks very much in the same size and shape. There's some, I got some extra wires, patch wires, always necessary. And, okay, so what was the thinking of this? What would be the ideal complement to this small Volca modular here? Well, it's got its oscillator, it's got a sequencer, it's got the basics you need. It's got a small reverb that's kind of an emulation of a spring reverb, and it kind of does sound like that, but I think most people acknowledge it's one of the weaker parts of this. I mean, it can range between not really giving you any effects through to something that sounds like a very basic spring reverb treatment of the sound through to something that just kind of more or less destroys it altogether. It just becomes a it slathers it in reverb, but not in a very interesting way. So it's not the most exciting. So the first thing I thought I would complement it with in this little case is an effects unit. And so what I got was this. This is the Cirrus Classic. In other words, this is Clouds for people who know their Eurorack history. This is the Mutable Instruments Clouds, but in AE format. So there's always this cliche about using clouds in Eurorack to just make these big ambient washes. It's a granular reverb, or it's a granular processor that is used very often to turn small sounds into big washes, but it can do a lot of other stuff as far as I understand. So I've got this to go in this box, and that is going to be doing the sound treatment. The other thing that I think, if you want to use a box like this as a sort of standalone, okay, you've got a single monophonic sequence line, but I think for most of the time you want at least two voices of some sort, maybe a rhythmical complement to it. I'm not really into modular a lot. I mean, I'm still doing most of my music in the DAW. And when I've seen what people do for rhythms and drums, it kind of looks a bit fiddly, or a bit, it seems there's an awful lot of components you have to get to do something fairly basic. So I wasn't going to go the traditional route of getting a sequencer and drums, but I was impressed by my Kastle. So what I've got here, this is from Wonkystuff, who are a British supplier of AE Modular stuff, is this the Kastle Drum in AE format. So this is going to give me, this is another almost complete instrument. It's going to give me some kind of rather experimental, noisy, rhythmic bass. It's got its own LFO. It's got its own, what I think is really a kind of rungler. This like a shift register bass sequencer. In other words, it kind of has a few random values and it cycles through them. So this will generate me a bass of rhythm over which I intend to play the Volca. So let's now actually get the box out. You can see I'm using this bit of bent wire that was a notebook, the ring bound. So this is very exciting. I've been thinking about this for over a year, in fact, what I would like to do with this, and planning it out. So that's it. That's the nice, and yeah, it is pretty Volca size. Allegedly, you can put one of these on it. Yeah, you can. The deck saver. So this is the sort of built-in power. This is the cable. So let's put it together and see what comes out. So this is the Cirrus Classic. It's the original Clouds. Got mono and stereo there. Got the inputs coming in here, and as I say, I think it basically samples a buffer and then lets you, like a granular synthesis, granular reverb, turns it into a bunch of little grains and plays it back. So take this off. See where you will slot in, I guess third one along. I need a small screwdriver. Right, a 3. I've never had a 3 width module before, so let's see how easy this is to fit in. So I think that's let's do the next two, loosen those up a bit. So this is a 2 width module. Unfortunately, I don't actually have my VM bridge with me at the moment, so I can't put that in, but that will be going in here with something else. I'm not quite sure what. Probably a modulators that I've got, because obviously modulators are always handy. So I'm saying that because obviously what it means is I cannot directly connect anything from here into here, but fortunately these two here is they're both called outputs, but in fact one of them acts as an input, so I should in principle be able to put the output from the Volca now into that. So let's start off by connecting the power for the AE. Before we look at the Volca things, so let's take the output. Actually, I'm going to need the bigger ones. Take the output from the Cirrus into the turn the volume up. I have no idea how to use this yet, of course. I'm just going to start playing around. Let's just put something into it. Connection from here to here. I actually know nothing at all about how to do this. Okay. So I think I've started to understand this better now, although every time I try it out it still behaves slightly unusually. So if I were to just take the click out of here, this is the pulse, and I were to put it into this drum, what we've got here is some drums whose absolute value is set. So these two controls here control which of the drum sounds is playing. So let's turn this down for a second. As I move up here, but if I turn that down altogether, I get nothing. I have to turn it up a certain way. And now if I turn this down or up, I'm going to get different sounds, but they're going to stick to being fairly regular. As I turn this up, the more I turn this up, the more sensitive the range of these different sounds is going to be. But as I'm just sending it the clock, it doesn't make much sense. If I send it the LFO, doesn't do anything. If I send it a pattern now, this is a pattern that's coming from it's a kind of rungler. It's the stepped something or other. I can't remember its name now. So the pattern that comes out, in other words, the values that are going into this, are going to depend what's in that rumbler. Now, if I hook that here up to this, I believe it's now going to choose various random values. I'm also going to turn this down and turn this down a bit. Okay, this here is the decay, and strangely, when I turn it further from the vertical position, I get longer sounds. Now, those sounds are all just arbitrary or randomly generated because I've got this feed connected to the plus, the positive. If I to now take it out, it should cycle through. I'm going to speed it up a bit for a minute. 16 of them. If I plug it into this negative here, it's now going to cycle through 8. And now you can start hearing something that sounds more like an actual rhythm, because an 8-step sequence here is more intelligible to us, let's say. I can slow it down with this knob here, the tempo knob. But I'm not doing very much more with the sound. So one thing I can do is I can send the, let's say, the LFO through the pitch here. Now, if I were to take this decay to make it slightly tighter, I get more percussive sounds. If I were to change these sounds here, let's make this more sensitive. Bring this down here. How these positions really relate to the sounds is still quite mysterious to me. Speed that up a bit. Make that even more sensitive. Maybe I'm just going to put that on the pattern as well. Now this is all coming in through the Cirrus. So the Cirrus here, just picking out a mixer, a blend of the two at the moment. And the density of the grain seems to make a big difference. If I leave the density position here vertically, then it doesn't seem to do much. If I start to pull it, either you start to hear more of the reverb or delay coming in. And now these textures and the size start making a big difference. Same with the pitch here. Slow it down a bit. You can now start to hear how there is a bit of a groove building up. But there is a bit of this noise here. Let's see what I can do to get rid of that noise. Now we're going back to some... We've gone back to the full 16 pattern now. Taking the positive and putting it back in this feed should start giving me a new set of random things. I'm filling up the little sequencer with another set of random values. And then when I pull it out, but if I take the negative here, again, I'll go back to the 8-step sequence, which tends to feel a little bit more intelligibly rhythmic. Remember, the simpler version of this is just that. there is some noise getting in there. It's not entirely clear where that noise is coming from. Sometimes I get rid of it. I'm going to now change this decay has a huge effect on the actual sound. Take it up here and we're back to our little clicks. Take it down here. It's almost like it's a sort of envelope shape going from a up here to a very sharp attack. And it can change the sound as well, which is quite surprising, really. Let's start making some more random selection of sequence again. Speed down. I have no understanding yet how this Cirrus works, really, what I'm doing, but let me just turn this density knob up. Which clearly makes our very sensitive, the speed knob here. If I take the blend down a bit, excuse me. So let's take all those out and try a different combination. Let's take the pitch and connect the pitch to the thing pattern while the click just controls. Now, something that you can do that's quite interesting is to take, let's say, the LFO, which is producing a kind of slow triangular wave here, and let's feed that into, say, this pitch value here. Now this change in pitch is coming from the effects. That ratcheting sound is, I think, the top of the LFO. Obviously, when we turn up this tempo, we can get that affects now both the LFO that's controlling the Cirrus and our own clock. So quite remarkable sounds coming out of this. Not very predictable, at least to me, not yet. What does the size do? Turn the blend down. Now I'm going to put this into the blend. So we're turning up the surprisingly groovy, actually. You can make some nice swingy patterns with this. But just by changing you realise it's actually the position in the grains that's causing that swing. So change this up. There's a sort of sweet spot to really get that swing. And then going back to turning the drum. So that's it. I think I'm out. This is what I've got to show so far. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back.